Hi everyone. So this is your notice and note test, and it's going to look and work just like yesterday's review or practice. So we'll read this very short story, and then you will tell me which of the 6 signposts you found. So you'll find one of the signposts in here. If you find more than one, that's okay. Just choose one. Just tell me about one. And then you will explain it in 2 or 3 sentences. So, oh, and as you're explaining, I wanted to add this too. Don't forget those basic requirements in writing. So you're writing in complete sentences using correct capitalization and punctuation. You are not using any slang or text speak or profanity in your writing. Um, Try not to write any run-ons or comma splices. Try not to write any fragments. So just these very basic elements of writing that we've talked about in the past. All right, here we go with our first story. Ben was lying on his bed, staring up at the ceiling when he heard his door open a crack. Grandpa peeked his head inside the door. Hey, Ben, I'll be downstairs if you need anything. I guess you're here to babysit me and make sure I don't spend all afternoon playing video games, said Ben. I'm not going to lie to you. Yes, I believe your parents asked me to stay with you while the rest of the family went to the Cubs game because they wanted to make sure you wouldn't do anything they didn't approve of, Grandpa replied. They don't trust me at all, do they? Ben grumbled. Grandpa walked over to Ben's bed and sat on the corner of it. Now, Ben, can you blame 'em? Apparently they told you what I did, mumbled Ben. Yes, they told me about the stolen video game. Ben looked down at his bed. I didn't even want the dumb video game. I only did it because Elliot and Daniel dared me. I don't believe I've met Elliot and Daniel, Grandpa said. I'm sure Mom told you about 'em, Ben retorted. Mom and Dad don't like them, but they're my best friends. I must say, Ben, that I can't see how boys who dare you to do illegal things can be considered very good friends, said Grandpa. Ben's face grew red. You sound just like Mom and Dad. Ben, when I was about your age, I had so-called friends who convinced me that I'd be cool if I started to smoke cigarettes. Within a year, I had come to realize that these boys were going down a reckless path that I didn't want to be a part of. I found some new friends, but now, 60 years later, I still have this terrible smoking habit that I just can't seem to kick. Take it from me, find some new friends before you do something you'll regret for the rest of your life. All right, so now you'll tell me which of the 6 signposts you found in this story, and then write 2 or 3 sentences explaining it. All right, second story. Please don't let the ball come to me, Bree prayed as the server on the other side of the volleyball net threw the ball up in the air. Sure enough, the ball came barreling toward Bree like a rocket. She couldn't help herself. She moved out of the way, and the ball hit the floor right where she had been standing. Bree looked up at the stands and saw her dad put his face in his hands. A moment later he looked up and yelled, "Bree, hit the ball!" Everyone in the gym could hear the anger in his voice. Bree's chin began to tremble. "It's okay. You'll get it next time," said her teammate, Angie. "Shake it off." A few minutes later it was Bree's turn to serve. Her stomach was churning. She took a deep breath to try to calm her nerves. "You can do this, Bree. Maybe this will be the first serve you'll get over the net." But as she caught a glimpse of her dad's skeptical face out of the corner of her eye, her confidence shrank just like a balloon that was released of its air. Sure enough, when Bree served the ball, it sailed right into the net. When Bree got into the car after the game, her mom tried to be encouraging. "Did you have fun? Because if you had fun, that's all that counts." Dad scoffed at that comment. Bree remained silent in the back seat, 1,000 thoughts running through her head. Why does Dad have to be so competitive? Why can't he be supportive like the rest of the girls' parents? Will he stop loving me if I can't ever find a sport that I'm good at? A single tear ran down her face, but she wiped it away before her dad could catch her crying. She knew he'd be furious if he saw her crying. All right, which of the 6 signposts did you find? And write 2 or 3 sentences explaining it. And here is the third story. Blake walked into the family room where his older brother was sitting on the couch talking on the phone. He grabbed the remote, planning to turn on the PlayStation. His brother snatched the remote away from him. He pointed to the door and mouthed the word, "Out." Blake grabbed for the remote, but Ryan was waving it in the air, keeping it away from him. "Just a minute, Claire," Ryan said in a friendly voice, and then covered his phone with his hand. "Get out of here, I need some privacy," Ryan ordered. "Make me," Blake replied, his hands on his hips. "If I have to leave, you're going to pay when I get off the phone," hissed Ryan. "If you try doing anything to me, I'll tell Mom," Blake said, standing his ground. "You're such a brat," Ryan huffed as he left the room. A few hours later, Blake was shooting some hoops in the driveway. Ryan stopped his car along the curb. He and a girl Blake didn't recognize climbed out of opposite sides of the car. "Claire, this is my younger brother, Blake," said Ryan. His voice was as sweet as honey. "It's nice to meet you, Blake. Do you mind if we shoot some hoops with you?" asked Claire. "That's fine with me," said Blake, passing Claire the ball. "Ryan, you're so lucky to have a brother. I've always wanted a sibling," said Claire. "In fact, if I had a younger sister, I just know that we'd be the best of friends." "Yeah, Blake's the best," said Ryan. "We have a super close relationship." Blake looked at his brother like he had lost his mind. "We do?" All right. Which of the notice and note signposts do you find in this one, in this story? And then tell me in 2 or 3 sentences all about it. All right, here's the fourth story. Grace stood at the end of the diving board line, contemplating what to do. She wished she could melt into the hot cement beneath her feet. In spite of the sweltering outdoor temperature, her teeth were clattering together and her entire body was shaking. She looked down and realized that her arms were also trembling. Were folded up across her chest in a praying position. "That's a good idea," she thought. "Start praying." Grace watched as Joshua, another boy in her swimming class, jumped off the diving board and into the water. The top of his head bobbed to the surface, and then he swam effortlessly to the side of the pool. He made it look so easy. Grace thought back to the incident in June. She had let her friend, Berkeley, convince her to jump into the pool, and she swallowed a mouthful of water. Panicking, she started to flail her arms and legs under water. Her lungs started to burn. She looked around, feeling like she was in a glass bubble with no opportunity to escape. Finally, out of nowhere, an arm swooped around her and carried her to the surface. When she reached fresh air, she began to cough and gasp for air at the same time. She noticed the lifeguard's red rescue tube beside her. The lifeguard, with his hand still around her side, began to kick, moving them to the ladder, where another lifeguard helped her out of the pool. By now she realized that everyone in the entire pool was staring at her. It was an awful, embarrassing moment she wished she could forget. Following the incident, Grace's mom immediately decided to enroll Grace in swim lessons, which brought her to this same exact point at the end of the diving board line. There was now only one other girl in front of her in line. "You can do this," Grace tried to convince herself. "Look, there's even a lifeguard already floating in the water at the end of the board in case you need help. Nothing bad is going to happen." All right, which signpost do you see? And write 2 or 3 sentences to explain it. All right, number 5. It's hard to believe that baseball practice will begin in another month. Dad said at supper one night, "Maybe we should try to get to the batting cages sometime this week and do some hitting." I took a deep breath. I had vowed that the next time Dad brought up baseball, I was going to talk to him about my thoughts. "Dad, I was thinking, why don't you take a break from coaching my team this year?" "You don't want to play baseball this season?" Dad asked, surprised. I shook my head. "No, I want to play. I just think it might be time for me to have someone else for a coach. You won't always be able to be my coach, so I should probably get used to listening to someone else." This was partially the truth. I didn't add the part about how I was hoping to be placed on Mr. Miller's team. Mr. Miller was the dad of Micah, a kid in my grade, but he was also the coach of the 8th grade team. Everyone said what an awesome coach he was, and I felt like I was missing out. Besides that, I wanted Mr. Miller to notice that I was a strong catcher. Perhaps it would give me a leg up when I would be playing 8th grade baseball in 2 short years. Dad looked perplexed. "Okay," he said slowly. I could tell he was trying to process my request. Suddenly I realized something. My dad didn't know his father. He often said that he always wanted to be the type of dad he wished he had had when he was younger. Dad always volunteered to coach all of my teams because he wanted to be as involved as possible. He wanted to be a great dad for me. I immediately regretted what I had said. All right, which signpost did you see? And in 2 or 3 sentences, tell me about it. All right, here is our last one. If I had to sum up the past 2 months with one word, I would choose the word change. First, there was the monumental difference between middle school and elementary school. Getting used to changing teachers and changing classrooms every 45 minutes had been challenging for me. Instead of trying to figure out the habits and expectations of one teacher, I had to figure out how 7 different teachers ran their classrooms. Then there were the changes going on at home. My big brother Alex had decided to move to Dad's house, leaving Mom and me alone. I could tell that Mom missed Alex terribly, and I did too. Yeah, he visited on the weekends, but it just wasn't the same. Finally, things had changed with my best friend. Laura had become distant and withdrawn, and I couldn't figure out the cause. She would not admit that anything was wrong, but she had been my best friend far too many years for me to believe her obvious lie. Something big was bothering her, and I felt hurt that she was shutting me out rather than letting me try to help her. I wished with all of my being that my life could return to how simple things were when I was in 5th grade. However, my grandmother's words echoed in my head. The one constant in life is change. She used to say that phrase often, and I never understood what she meant by it. But after living my life for the past 2 months, the meaning was crystal clear to me. No matter how much we wished things could stay the same, change is inevitable. It's going to happen, whether we want it or not. All right, which signpost did you find in this story? And then write about it in 2 or 3 sentences. If you have any questions or concerns, like always, you can get hold of me. And have a great day.